This small creature on her shoulder may look like nothing more than a harmless puppy, soft and adorable, but it's not what you think, because this cute little animal is actually a young predator with instincts sharp enough to terrify half the known galaxy. And today, a human student walked into class carrying two of them. The entire amphitheater froze the moment Sarah Chen stepped through the doors. On each shoulder sat a pair of wolf-descendant pups, their bright eyes tracking every movement in the room with the focus of natural hunters. A ripple of panic ran through the alien students, many of whom had only ever encountered predators through holograms or stasis fields. To them, the creatures were dangerous, unpredictable, and absolutely not something any sane person should bring into a learning environment. The fear wasn't surprising. After all, these pups weren't toys or harmless companions. They were young, members of one of Earth's most successful predator lineages. Animals descended from ancient wolves that once stalked frozen wastelands and took down prey many times their size. Even at a few weeks old, they carried the instincts of pack hunters. And if that wasn't enough, the sight of Sarah handling them so casually, without armor, containment fields, or sedation, only deepened the disbelief spreading across the room. To every alien watching, it looked reckless, it looked dangerous, it looked human, and that was exactly where the stakes came in. Because if anything went wrong today, even one pup snapped, or bit, or growled too loudly, the consequences wouldn't fall on Sarah alone. They would fall on humanity. Earth was still new to the consortium, still under heavy scrutiny. Every species watched the humans closely, curious and wary, waiting to see whether this unpredictable predator-descended race could truly coexist among them. If Sarah mishandled her animals, even by accident, it could spark panic, reinforce every negative stereotype about humans, and jeopardize her standing in the university. This wasn't just a class presentation. It was a test of trust, a test of responsibility, a test of whether humans could manage predators without endangering others. If Sarah failed, the university could ban human students from bringing biological specimens ever again. Worse, the consortium could question Earth's readiness for deeper integration. One mistake, one misunderstanding, one flash of teeth at the wrong moment, and everything humanity had worked for could begin to unravel. But Sarah didn't look nervous. She didn't look hesitant. She walked calmly to the center of the room. Her pups perched contently on her shoulders, their tails wagging in perfect sync. To her, this wasn't a crisis. It wasn't a gamble. It was just another day living with creatures humans had trusted for 30,000 years. And that confidence, that ease, was the first sign that the other species in the room were about to learn something very surprising about Earth and about humans. Professor Zixthar had known this day was coming, but he still wasn't ready for it. Predator Presentation Day was always stressful, even in the best cycles. Most species preferred to keep their hunters at a distance behind barriers, inside containment fields, or as clean, sanitized holograms with the sound muted. The Valorans, for example, had brought recordings of their cliff-dwelling ambush hunters, carefully edited so no one fainted. The Threen had shown preserved, specimens floating in stasis, never once risking live movement. Even the shy Plexians managed to present neural scans of their world's pack hunters, though they practically climbed the walls to avoid being near the images. Humans, however, did not follow patterns, especially not Sarah Chen. She had sat quietly in the back row when the assignment was first announced, her forward-facing eyes bright with something Zixthar could only describe as mischief. When she raised her hand and asked for permission to bring living specimens, the entire class froze. The Threen representative fainted. Plexian let out a sound that every translation device labeled as distress whistle. Zixthar had nearly deleted the assignment altogether on the spot. "That is highly irregular, Miss Chen," he had stammered at the time. "The safety protocols, I'll take full responsibility," she had said calmly. "They'll be completely under my control. Trust me." Trust, what a human concept. Yet against his better judgment, he had approved her request, and he spent the next 2 rotations updating safety documentation, rewriting risk assessments, and mentally preparing for a disaster. The consortium's insurance department had already threatened to revoke his coverage if anything with teeth or claws crossed the university threshold. Now, at the exact moment Sarah's name appeared on the chronometer display, Zixthar's 3. Hearts hammered nervously in his chest, kept replaying her words in his mind. Living specimens. The amphitheater was full of students from delicate prey species. Their fear responses alone could trigger an evacuation. When the door slid open, the reaction was immediate. Gasps echoed, seats squeaked, someone hissed. Several students ducked behind their desks, as if preparing for impact. Because Sarah Chen did not walk in with a hologram. She did not walk in with a containment case. She walked in with 2 living predators perched on her shoulders, like it was the most normal thing in the universe. And in that moment, Professor Zixtar realized 2 things at once. First, that humans were nothing like any species he had ever taught before. And second, that this class was about to learn a lesson none of them would ever forget. As Sarah stepped fully into the amphitheater, every alien student seemed to shrink into their seat. The 2 pups on her shoulders lifted their heads, ears perked, noses twitching at the unfamiliar scents around them. Their little claws clicked lightly against her clothing as they shifted, their bright eyes jumping from student to student with natural hunter focus. To them, the room was nothing more than a new environment to explore. To the rest of the class, it looked like doom on for tiny paws. Zixthar's neural implant automatically accessed Earth's biological database, searching for a match. Instead of calming him, the information nearly made him faint. Kislapus familiaris, descendants of ancient wolves, apex pack hunters, bite force capable of crushing bone, survived ice ages by hunting prey many times their size. And humans, apparently, kept them inside their homes. The pups, barely 8 weeks old, were still unmistakably predators. Their jaws were small but sharp, their teeth white and needle-like. Their bodies were compact, built for speed and coordination. And even as juveniles, their instincts showed in every movement, the way they tracked motion, the way their gaze locked onto anything that shifted, the way their small muscles tensed with excitement. "Everyone, meet Thor and Loki," Sarah said cheerfully, as if introducing stuffed toys. The reaction was chaos. A Valorant student squeaked and dove under their desk. A Plexian clung to the wall paneling with trembling limbs. 2 Threen students started whispering rapid emergency. Exit strategies. Zixtar silently cursed every decision that had led him to this moment. But Sarah didn't seem to notice the panic. She casually lifted both pups into her arms, holding them against her chest with practiced ease. Immediately, the predators melted into soft, wriggling bundles of joy. One licked her cheek, tail wagging so hard it blurred into motion. The other gnawed playfully on her glove, making little grumbling sounds that sent shivers of fear through the class. "These are German Shepherd puppies," Sarah explained. "A very famous predator species from Earth." The whispering stopped instantly. Every translation device in the room flagged the term predator in bright red. And today, Sawa continued, walking confidently toward the presentation platform. "I'll explain how wolves and their descendants shaped human evolution and why we became partners instead of enemies." The pups squirmed happily in her arms. One yawned, flashing rows of tiny teeth. Zixtar swallowed hard. The rest of the class had used holograms, stasis fields, and heavily protected samples. The human had arrived with 2 living apex predators, who treated her like their mother, and for the first time, Professor understood exactly why other species were so wary of humans, because no other species on the station would dare walk anywhere near predators like these. But for humans, this was just an ordinary day. Sarah carried the pups down the steps with confidence that seemed almost unnatural to the rest of the class. The moment she reached the presentation platform, she gently set both animals on the floor. Instantly, they tumbled over each other, paws flailing, tiny growls rumbling from their throats as they wrestled. The sound made several students recoil, assuming the creatures were preparing to attack. But Sarah only smiled. "Wolves are pack hunters," she explained calmly. "They use teamwork, strategy, and communication to hunt prey far larger than themselves. Even as puppies, you can see those instincts at work. Thor and Loki crashed into each other again, biting at each other's ears in what looked to the aliens like violent combat. One Plexian covered all four of their eyes. Three student pressed themselves flat against their seat, whispering, "They're fighting. They're fighting." "They're not fighting," Sarah said, amused. "They're playing." To demonstrate, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small spherical object. She tossed it across the amphitheater. Both pups froze for half a second, then bolted toward it with startling speed. Their claws clicked against the smooth floor as they scrambled forward, slipping, tumbling, recovering, and continuing the chase with fierce determination. "This is prey drive," Sarah explained. "The instinct to chase, catch, and kill. Adult. Wolves use this to bring down elk and bison. Puppies use it for toys." One pup, Loki, managed to grab the toy, and Thor immediately lunged after him. What followed looked like a miniature battle. They tugged, growled, rolled, and snapped at the air, completely absorbed in their game. The students closest to the platform scooted back several meters. "But here's the interesting part," Sarah continued. "Despite being predators, wolves and dogs form strong social bonds. Their instinct isn't just to hunt, but to work together." She gave a short whistle. Instantly, both puppies dropped the toy and sprinted back to her, sitting at her feet, with their tails wagging furiously. The entire class stared in open disbelief. How did you control them so easily?" the three students stammered. "It's simple," Sarah said, scratching the pups behind their ears. "We've lived together for 30,000 years. Wolves and humans learned to understand each other. We became partners." Zixthar leaned forward despite himself. "But these creatures are apex predators. How did your species survive alongside them?" Sarah's expression softened. "Because humans have a strange quirk, Professor. When we look at a predator, something with teeth, claws, instincts, we don't just see danger." She smiled. "We see potential friends. Humans have domesticated wolves, cats, foxes, ferrets. We've even made companions out of venomous snakes. We swim with sharks for fun. We rescue bear cubs and raise them like children. It's not logical, but it's deeply human." The pups leaned into her touch, completely trusting. Loki curled up in her lap and began snoring softly. Thor, meanwhile, chewed on the cuff of her sleeve, tail wagging hard enough to tap the floor. "You see," Sarah said, "these two will grow into 70-pound predators strong enough to knock me over, fast enough to catch most prey animals, and powerful enough to break bones with their bite." She kissed the top of Thor's head gently. "I will trust them completely." The class stared in stunned silence. No one had ever seen a predator behave so gently, so lovingly, towards someone considered prey by most species. And none of them had seen a human handle danger with such confidence, ease, and warmth. "Humans don't just study predators," Sarah concluded softly. "We live with them. We grow with them. Sometimes we even share our homes with them." The amphitheater was so quiet that even the gentle snoring of Loki could be heard from the back row. Every alien student watched Sarah with wide eyes, unable to fully understand what they were witnessing. In their societies, predators were feared, controlled, or kept at extreme distance. But the humans standing before them treated these small hunters with affection, trust, and confidence. As if danger simply did not apply to her, Sarah saw their confusion and smiled gently. "There's something important you need to understand about humans," she said. "We don't form bonds with animals because they're safe. We form bonds because we see something familiar in them." Zixthar tilted his head, all three hearts beating faster as he scribbled notes. "Familiar?" he repeated. "Could a prey species find familiarity in predators?" Sarah's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Professor, humans aren't prey." The room froze again. "In the early days of Earth," Sarah continued, "before cities, before technology, before we even had language, humans were hunters, persistence hunters. We may not be the fastest or strongest animals, but we can outlast almost anything. We chased prey across entire continents. We tracked footprints through storms, survived because we were stubborn, strategic, and unafraid to face danger. Thor barked once, as if agreeing with her. So when early humans saw wolves, she said they didn't see enemies. They saw creatures with skills we admired: strength, loyalty, strategy, teamwork. Wolves hunted in packs, just like humans. They protected each other, just like humans. They lived by cooperation and instinct, just like humans. The Threen student raised a trembling limb. But they could have killed you. Sarah nodded. Yes, and we could have killed them. But instead, something incredible happened. We learned to trust each other. She picked up Loki, who stretched sleepily and then nuzzled her neck. The entire class stared in disbelief at how easily the predator relaxed in her arms. Humans saw potential partners, Sarah said softly, and wolves saw potential allies. So we grew together. We changed each other. We learned to share food, share homes, share warmth. Over thousands of years, wolves became dogs, and humans became better because of them. A hush settled over the room. That's the human philosophy, Sarah explained. We don't run from danger. We try to understand it. We don't avoid predators. We look them in the eye and ask if they want to join our family. Professor Zixthar could hardly process the implications. Your species willingly bonds with creatures that could harm you? Sarah laughed, that strange human sound that could mean anything from humor to challenge. Professor, humans bond with other humans who could harm them. We're a species built on trust. It's risky, sure. But it's also the reason we survived long enough to join the consortium. Scratched Thor under the chin, and the pup melted into her palms. Growling playfully, domesticating wolves wasn't a sign of our strength, she said. It was a sign of our hope. Humans believe cooperation is stronger than fear, even if it starts with a creature that has fangs. Around the room, the fear in the student's eyes began to change into something else: curiosity. And maybe even respect. For a long moment, no one moved. The class sat frozen, each student processing Sarah's words in their own way. Thor let out a happy bark that echoed through the amphitheater, and Loki, still half asleep, wiggled deeper into Sarah's arms with a soft, contented sigh. Their innocence clashed so sharply with their reputation as predators that the contrast itself seemed unreal. Finally, a Valorant student raised a trembling appendage. May I touch one? The voice wavered between terror and fascination. Sarah's face lit up with a warm, inviting smile. Of course. They love meeting new people. That invitation alone created shockwaves across the room. Sarah placed Loki gently on the floor, and the small pup stretched, shook his fur out, and blinked curiously at the Valorant approaching him. Every student leaned forward. Some held their breath. Loki sniffed the Valorant's hand, gave it one decisive lick, and then immediately attempted to climb into their lap. The Valorant let out a startled squeak, but didn't pull away. In fact, their entire posture relaxed as Loki nuzzled against them, tail wagging fiercely. The Valorant began laughing in surprise, their nervousness melting into delight. Seeing this, the other students hesitated, then slowly inched forward. Timid Plexian extended a quivering hand toward Thor. The pup stared for one intense second, then licked their palm and flopped over, exposing his belly in a universal request for affection. The Plexian, who had earlier clung to the wall in terror, now let out a soft, astonished noise and gently scratched Thor's stomach. Thor wiggled in pure joy and kicked his legs, making the Plexian smile a trembling but genuine expression. One by one, the class gathered around the two predators. Their fear shifted into awe, their awe into amusement, and their amusement into something much deeper. The puppies sniffed, licked, nuzzled, and wagged their way through the group, winning over even the most skittish species. A Threen student knelt very carefully, extending a single limb toward Loki. To everyone's surprise, Loki didn't bite, snap, or pounce. He simply curled up beside the Threen, resting his head on their knee as if they had known each other for years. The Thren looked up at Sarah, eyes wide. "He trusts me?" whispered. Sarah smiled softly. "He trusts everyone who treats him with kindness." At that moment, Thor somehow managed to climb onto a Plexian's shoulder and perch there, like a furry, wiggling hat. The Plexian froze, unsure whether to scream or laugh. Then Thor licked their ear, and the Plexian burst into delighted giggles. Zixthar watched all of this unfold, his hearts beating in stunned amazement. Fear was dissolving right before his eyes, replaced by connections, something no hologram, no simulation, and no lecture had ever accomplished. Humans didn't dominate predators with strength. They disarmed them with trust. For the first time in Consortium University history, Predator Presentation Day ended not in panic, but in laughter. As the puppies continued bouncing from student to student, the atmosphere in the amphitheater transformed completely. Where fear had once clung to the air like a heavy fog, warmth and laughter now filled the room.
Ow.
Loki flopped happily onto the floor, overwhelmed from all the attention, while Thor curled up on top of a Threen student's head, looking extremely proud of himself. The sight was so bizarre, so wonderfully absurd, that even the most anxious species couldn't help smiling. Professor Zixthar stood at the front, his 3 hearts beating in a rhythm he had never felt before. He had watched countless Predator presentations over the years, some impressive, some frightening, some purely academic, but never had he seen anything like this. Predators were supposed to inspire caution, demand distance, and require layers of protection. Yet here they were, licking faces, wagging tails, and making friends out of every terrified student in the room. He opened his notes and began typing rapidly, unable to hide his fascination. Humanity does not conquer predators through force, he wrote, nor through technology, nor through biological advantage. Humans bond with predators. They turn danger into companionship. They transform hunters into family. He glanced up just in time to see Thor roll onto his back in front of a trembling Plexian, who, moments ago, had been too afraid to breathe near him. The Plexian reached out with shaking hands and scratched the pup's chest. Thor melted instantly, tail tapping a rhythmic beat against the floor. Zixthar added another line to his notes. This ability to create trust where none should exist. They explain humanity's rapid integration into consortium society. They see allies. Where others see threats, they recognize themselves in those who should be enemies, and offer kinship instead. Across the room, Loki stumbled sleepily toward Sarah, who scooped him up with effortless affection. Her classmates followed her with eager eyes now, asking questions, requesting to pet the pups again, wanting to know everything about Earth's strange wolf descendants. Sarah laughed softly, her joy radiating through the room. Zixthar observed her carefully. The first human to attend the university. The one who walked in with apex predators and walked out with 20 new friends. There was power in that quiet. It's profound power. He typed one final note. Humans may be the most dangerous predator of all, not because of their strength, but because of their capacity for loyalty, empathy, and connection. Their real power lies not in hunting, but in bonding. We should be grateful they prefer cooperation over conquest. When Zixthar looked up again, he saw Sarah standing at the back of the amphitheater, watching her classmates laugh as they played with the pups. She smiled, an expression full of warmth, and the strange human confidence that always seemed too big for her small frame, and in that moment was clear to everyone in the room. Making friends had always been humanity's greatest talent.